Welcome, Clem, to your own podcast.
Thank you, Milan.
This podcast, why did we call it Tracking the Truth?
The conversations that were happening behind the scenes, but nobody really speaks about on the forefront.
Trust eroded.
The affiliate operator situation, going into something which is more difficult to understand. We get into the crossfire when things are not managed properly.
ROI
Is extremely difficult to calculate.
Standardization
Data is data.
can sometimes slow down the innovation.
People that say so many things, I expected more.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tracking the Truth. This time we will do a retrospective on the first 7 episodes of the podcast. And you might be wondering, where is that lovely lady who was your host? And I have good news. She's right here in the hot seat this time. Welcome, Clem, to your own podcast.
Thank you, Milan. Thank you for having me to my own podcast.
You're welcome. So a lot of people know you in the industry, and especially now after the podcast. But for those who don't, can you give us a brief introduction?
So I've been in the industry for 17 years, started in a poker company doing night shifts and, grew up in the industry over the years. And now I'm the CEO of my affiliates. I'm also a mother of 2 children, one who is 24 years old and the other one 15 years old.
That's a long journey.
It is a long journey.
But we can learn a lot from that.
Thank you.
So when we decided to do this podcast, what was the answer we wanted to get, or what was the question that we are addressing, and why did we call it Tracking the Truth?
Okay, so let's put premises here. The podcast was not my idea. It was yours and Kurt, our brand manager.
More Kurt's.
But we explored a number of formats before we came to this one. And it was an interesting journey because we knew what we wanted to do. So we knew we wanted to explore subjects in the industry that were not really exposed in other podcasts, but we didn't really know how we were going to handle it, right? What was going to be the format. So Tracking the Truth came from tracking, right? Tracking, we're an affiliate marketing and tracking platform. So that's where tracking comes. And the truth, because we wanted to bring the truth and we wanted to bring people to say the truth about the issues on the podcast.
Okay, so we are mentioning these conversations that happen in the backstage or in the hallways of the conferences a lot. So do you have a clear example of one?
Well, it is not one. I don't know. I don't know if I want to mention only one. I think it's a whole. It's a whole bunch of topics that are being discussed and not brought up to the forefront. So if you go from data issues, KPI mismatch, women issues, transparency, standardization, and then we learned new terms across the podcast, right? So, I don't think there is one issue that is more important than the other to discuss here. I think, events, the number of events and whatever, all these issues were, in my view, important to discuss and understand the opinion of people about them.
But why are they so afraid to speak publicly?
Okay, so that's something I was quite, I would say, surprised, not shocked, but I was quite surprised, right? Because I thought that when we selected people to come on the podcast, we selected people according to what we knew they knew and what they were saying around. And I knew them as brave people, right? And I didn't realize that there was so much fear into speaking and nobody came for naming and shaming, right? I mean, it was not the purpose of the podcast, though sometimes you need to open those Pandora box and say, okay, this guy is a culprit of this. But people just refrain to do that. And that's the fear of repercussion. And I didn't realize that there was so much in the industry. So
did you suffer any?
I didn't. I am lucky that in the industry, so far I've never suffered from repercussion. I think I have been more esteemed and known for being extremely open on my opinions and I think it has saved me. It has helped my reputation grow rather than deceived me. So no, in the industry, I haven't suffered any of this, and I'm lucky.
Let's hope this will be a motivation for others to go in the same direction.
I hope. I really hope, because that's has always been my aim. Right? Is helping people finding their voices, and I think finding your voice wherever you are in the world is very important.
That's nicely put. So, can we progress if we don't address these topics as an industry?
No, we can't.
Why do you think that?
We can't, because when you keep silent, silence is stagnation, right? And when there is stagnation, there is no progress. As simple as that.
Okay, so let's start with some of those topics that we mentioned in the first 7 episodes. So many of our guests mentioned trust, and that's one of the words that came up a lot, and they said it's eroded. So do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. And there isn't one main reason, right? I think it's a build-up of many issues that have occurred in the past, and that people haven't spoken about, or not been cleared about, or not engaged into discussions, and that has eroded the trust over time.
Okay, and do you have an example of a clear mistrust and how that affects the operations?
I think the biggest example, Milan, it's the affiliate operator situation, and that's quite clear, I think.
And do you think anyone benefits from that mistrust?
I think on the short term, there is someone that benefits, right? Because, mistrust means you keep things for yourself. You don't have to actually expose things. Okay, so you keep close to yourself and you don't share things. But on the long run, nobody benefits from it, right? Because conversations are not happening, and you create more misunderstanding, more tensions, and really and truly, the landscape is what it is. Affiliates need operators, operator needs affiliate, and unless we're going to put these people around the table and actually push them to engage into discussions, the industry cannot evolve as it is.
As you said, you've been around for many years here in the industry. So do you think it's getting better or it's worse?
I think it's getting worse because things are getting more complicated, right? As we evolved, we added more systems, more technology, more layers. So we're not going into something which is easier to understand. We are going through things that are more difficult to understand. So I'm not very hopeful about that.
Okay, but now we mentioned operators and affiliates. So it's not usually only these two. It's who is getting also caught in the crossfire, like my affiliates. So how does this affect companies like us?
I don't think it affects them. I think it puts us in a more difficult positions, right? Because before, so as a statement, our clients are the operators. And before, we were only asked to answer operators. Now, there is a trend where, affiliates are not trusting operators' answers, and they are pushing for the truth. They are pushing for the reality. So when there is data mismatch, when there is whether it is from the tracking perspective or the revenue perspective, and they are being more pushy. So we're in the middle of a situation whereby we have to keep our relationship with the client, so with the operators, and we need to try to make things as easy as possible so that the operator can answer the affiliates. But then we have affiliates that also sometimes come to us and tell us, help us, because we're not getting the answers from the operators. So we're in the middle, and it's not a very easy situation to be in, because there are answers we can't give affiliates, even if sometimes we wish we could give them.
Does it affect our reputation?
Maybe sometimes because because some affiliates don't understand the ecosystem, right? If affiliates understand the ecosystem and understand that, when we're at conference and they're actually facing some of their own issues with tracking or whatever, and they know we're open and we're going to help them and whatever, these people will trust us. The smaller affiliates that don't understand the ecosystem would say, okay, my affiliate doesn't want to help, so they are the one hiding things, not the operator.
Okay. Do you have maybe a specific situation that you can remember?
Do I have, situation that I can remember about?
About us getting caught in the crossfire and actually affecting our reputation.
Yes. Do I want to speak about that report? Is that what you're asking me?
You can.
Okay, so let's go into it.
Or anything else.
Yes, I think we get into the crossfire when things are not managed properly. Okay, and I think one of the example, it is the Game Lounge report. Okay, so Game Lounge came out with this excellent idea of reporting on the capabilities of affiliate marketing and tracking software. However, the methodology and the goals were not very well defined. So they published 2 versions which were erroneous, that were not completely and thoroughly researched. So what happened? What happened is that they classified us and competitions into boxes without checking information at source. Okay, so this is where we're in the crossfire, because if we are judged as an affiliate software, as my affiliates, for not being transparent enough about data, it is wrong, right? Because it is operator that choose what they should be displaying. Therefore, in that particular context, Game Lounge is putting the pressure on the wrong people. Do you understand?
Yes. And I wanted to ask about restoring the trust, and the first step we did is had a great conversation with the guys of Game Lounge to make sure that doesn't happen. So
absolutely, but this is the problem when there is miscommunication and lack of clarity, right? Is that people then try to solve problems in a silo. Okay, so there is no transparency. So there is no dialogue. So these people took a great initiative and tried to resolve a problem in a silo. But when you try to resolve a problem in a silo and you close it onto yourself and say, I'm going to find my own solutions, of course, there is the risk of side damage that you don't want to create.
Mm-hmm. So these are the ways to restore the trust.
Yes, absolutely. So once you actually start communicating and say, okay, I'm going to explain you why your assessment is wrong, but you're going to have to also publish your rules on what your assessments are, and you start that discussion, then it becomes productive.
Okay, and do you think Tracking the Truth can also assist in people trying to restore that trust?
I believe, I strongly believe it can, because actually it's speaking about things, right? It's bringing conversations on the forefront, and is, we're not going to find solutions, right? But planting seeds in people's mind, having this conversation, help changing things, right? It's not going to change tomorrow, but at least if we can give it a start and seed those conversations and they continue happen, hopefully more in public than in private, but at least if they continue in private, where people get together and really try to put their mind together and find solutions, then we would have done something great.
Let's hope that happens soon. So another thing that came up a lot is the power imbalance in the industry. Do you think, do you agree with that statement, that there is a power imbalance?
There is a power imbalance, but I think it shifts from situation to situation. So when people will watch episode 3 and episode 4, episode 5, right, you're going to see the difference of perspective of people. We had Joe Hatch saying, operators have the power. We had Richard saying, affiliates have gained some leverage. And we also had Fabi that said, the operator is also have some kind of power.
So who do you think is right there, or?
I think there is no right answer. I think it's according to the situation. So if the operator has powers because they hold the data, but affiliate becomes starts having leverage because they have the players, right? So according to the discussions they're having, the leverage changes.
Okay, so that wouldn't be considered maybe a big issue since it changes constantly.
It is an issue. It is an issue because there is no balance, right?
Okay.
There is a power imbalance. There is no balance. There shouldn't be that relationship of power. There should be a relationship of cooperation, right? Of people working together. Not, having this game of who is going to win. It shouldn't be this way.
Okay. Another thing that came up and what we spoke about are events. So let's talk about events.
That was fun, though.
Yes, it was fun. It was a great episode. We ran some polls and they showed conference fatigue. Let's start from you first. Do you have conference fatigue?
Oh,
from
goodness.
The conference fatigue?
Goodness. Yes. I think I am one that says, yes, it's tiring. It's very tiring. It's very demanding, and it's also very expensive. So there is different kind of fatigue, right?
Yes, definitely. And we had one which was very big and very tiring conference.
Yes, absolutely.
But hopefully we get something out of it. And while we are talking about it, so we mentioned the ROI, measuring ROI. So what do you think about that conversation with Pierre?
It was a very interesting conversation because, of course, I think every business that invests in anything, whether it is a conference or anything else, expects ROI. However, we work in an industry whereby ROI is extremely difficult to calculate because when you have a stand, let's say at IGB this year, you may close the clients in 3 years. By the time, you would have forgotten what you did 3 years ago, right? So that conversation with Pierre was, I would say, a little bit evasive because I did not understand how Pierre suggested to act for me to actually understand the benefit of me going to any conferences, right? But I saw that there was a lot of reflection in what he was saying, that of course you cannot measure ROI on a conference as much as you would measure it on something else.
Yeah, so he agreed that there were many things in the conference industry that are not working well. So besides the ROI, do you have something that you think he was particularly right about?
Yes, I think, and really, I really appreciated his honesty when he spoke about, the lack of purpose of conferences, whereby there are many conferences, but nobody actually understands their purposes. So because nobody understands their purposes, or because the conference themselves don't understand their purposes, right? They target a very wide amount of people, and everyone is called to go, right? Mm-hmm. So nobody understands as a consumer, as a customer, nobody understands whether that is the right conference for me to go or not to go. And I think what Pierre said, if redefining purpose of each and every conference, was a very interesting point.
So has anything changed after that conversation from your perspective?
Well, I reflected on that because we also discussed not only conferences, but content itself, right? And that discussion steered me into thinking that there are people thinking of better way of doing it, but I am not convinced that things are going to change, right? And whether it is in the content, when we spoke about repetitive content, because clearly, conference organizer make money from the big stage you need to sponsor and not from the small stage where you go for free. So I'm not convinced that things are going to change, but I'm glad that, there is the thought that things need to change.
Okay, so let's move then to another topic and another episode, which we had with Richard Dennis, who we mentioned earlier, and standardization. Okay, so do you believe that's the direction industry needs to take?
Well, if the industry wants to be open and clear about its intent and purposes, and if the industry wants to evolve, yes, I think that's where the industry should go. Now, it's going to be a step-by-step process, right? Because who is going to take that on his shoulder and decide what is the standard? Is it operators? Is it affiliates? Is it affiliate marketing platform? Do we need a body that actually decides what is going to be the standard? So how do we get that moving? And that, I think, is the biggest difficulty.
So how would the standardization help the industry?
Because the industry would speak the same language, right? So if you have the same, if you call a banana, and you're not comparing banana with apples, then there is clarity, right? Right now, people call whatever they want. They have different calculations, different naming, different access to data. So all this creates an opacity. When you remove this, you create clarity.
But that sounds more of something that affiliates would need. So what is the incentive for the operators?
Well, the incentive for the operators is actually, keeping affiliates, keeping, their revenue stream, which is, right now, very much needed with all the changes in technology.
Okay, so why you think that it hasn't happened yet? One of the things you mentioned is who will be the one defining the standard, but why there are no movement towards that?
There is no movement because really and truly it's because of the power imbalance, right? Because the power on the data is on the operator, and the operator some or a lot of operators have not understood the interest of doing that it is in their interest to do that. So to come back to Richard, then yes, what they've started to do is actually putting the pressure out. They're going to start putting pressure on operators that don't display an amount of data to say we're not going to work with you. So again, this is a silo exercise. It needs to be something which is done at a much larger scale, because otherwise what is going to happen is that operators are going to get one standard, which is the game launch standard. But then if anyone else as a big affiliate comes back and say, but this is our standard, then we're creating even more confusion. So we have to be extremely careful how we handle this.
Okay, but do you think that standardization can sometimes slow down the innovation?
Why would it? If you stop losing time arguing about what means what, then you have time to work on better projects and innovate into better things.
But if you are forced to have the same data as everyone else and do not have an option to come up with other things, do you think maybe you remove some leverage?
No, because I don't think standardizations mean, first of all, I don't think that you can be so innovative with data, right? Data is what it is. So when you become innovative, it is more on the entertainment you're going to give to the players rather than the data you're going to create, because data is data. We all know what affiliates needs. We all know what operator needs. So that innovation is not going to happen in there, but it creates space for innovation elsewhere.
So we touched also power imbalance with this standardization. So all these things are connected. And one of the things that was coming up as pretty much I understood as a base of all this is the education, or at least it is a big factor. So do you think lack of education in the industry causes some of these issues?
Well, we see it, you and I, we see it day to day, right? We deal with so many different affiliate managers who have so many different levels of understanding, right? And so yes, the lack of education is a problem. It creates communication problem because when people don't know, they can't explain and they can't be clear with affiliates. So if an affiliate manager is not trained, for example, or does not understand how things work, then he cannot report to the affiliates. When he cannot report to the affiliates or answer an affiliate when there is a question, then affiliate is going to assume that something is dodgy, which most of the time it's not the case. But because there is a lack of education at the source, not understanding how things works, how things are calculated, how post-back server tracking works, how tracking works, then it creates suspicions.
How important it is to educate people more?
Well, I think this is a basic of life, right? It's not only in the industry. I mean, the more you know, the better the better you are. I don't know. It's a bit of a, lame statement, but, everyone should be hungry for knowledge, and everyone should want to operate something that he or she understands, and I think, we can't just blame people that are at middle level or junior level. I think it is us as, seniors of people that have actually worked in the industry long enough that should take the job of doing much more mentoring, because that's probably a job we're not doing well, because if they don't know, it's because we're not teaching. So I think it is at senior level that we should be reflecting and understand why we have come to that situation.
So that is the way we should address this, with more mentoring from the seniors.
Absolutely.
Okay. My question was, what I wanted to ask is, we have people trained for their specific position, but I don't think there is much an understanding of the industry as a whole. So you don't see the other perspective. So it is hard to understand what is needed from your clients or partners. So I believe, and I don't know if you would agree, that we need to educate people more on the whole industry.
Yes, because the industry is quite fragmented, right? So, people know very well their little niche, though they have a lack of understanding of how things relate together, and that's an issue, absolutely.
Yes, and from my experience when I started, that was the biggest issue for me, not understanding the other people in the industry and what they do. So, do you think anytime soon the industry will become less noisy and less fragmented?
No, I don't think that in the near future it is going to be less noisy and less fragmented. For the reason I explained before, we're implementing layers over layers over layers of technology, right? Mm-hmm. And we saw it with Clint in the episode with Clint, where he explained that, operators have their tracking software, affiliates have their tracking software, and then to measure clicks, there are so many layers of redirection, so that it creates more misunderstanding, so more noise. So I don't think on the short term it will. On the long term, it's hard to say.
But do you think the companies that resist addressing this chaos and wanting to change will suffer any kind of consequences?
On the long term, I think they will, because there will be there will be people that are willing to change, and they will be willing to progress, and there will be people that will resist the change, and with the people resisting the change, what happens is then you become irrelevant, right? Because because there will be brighter people that will take over. So somehow, at some point, it will resolve itself. Hopefully.
So now we'll come to the best part that I wanted to speak about. That's your host experience.
Goodness gracious.
There were great topics, and we covered some of them now. And I hope the viewers will like it. But now I want to ask you, from your perspective, how would you rate yourself first as a host of the podcast?
That's a tricky question. Mm-hmm. This one I wasn't prepared for. Okay, so how will I rate myself as a host of a podcast? I think, looking back and looking back at the first episode, going to this episode, I think I would start myself as a 4 and go up to a 7.5.
I think you can add maybe 1.5 more.
Thank you.
Just to leave a bit of space for improvement.
Thank you.
But what was the toughest thing that you experienced that you didn't expect, maybe?
I think the toughest thing is actually not... So it's funny, it's not being in control. Because as a host, okay, you control the narrative or you control the questions, but you don't control where the discussion is going, right? So for someone like me who is used to control things and to manage things and lead things to results and delivery, when you're on your seat, the seat that you are today, you have uncertainty, things that you're not seeing coming because you don't know what the next word your guest is going to say. So that probably was the toughest one.
And it's not easy to prepare then. So what did you learn about yourself maybe that you didn't know?
What did I learn about myself? I learned that, listening is harder than leading. Because, when you lead, you take things from a spot to the other one, and you have a direction. When you have to listen to people and actually sit there and don't control the narrative, okay? And, absorb, you can't draw your own conclusion. So you can't take part of the conversation because you're the host. So this is not a discussion, right? So you have to listen, absorb, disagree sometimes without actually having the control of what's going to be the ultimate outcome.
You like to be in control.
That's what he said.
Yes, we did one.
I placed it for you.
So, did it teach you anything about human behavior? So something that you saw from the guests?
Yes, it's quite a reflection, right? When you know people on the outside and you had this conversation on the outside and you bring them in front of a camera and they're exposed to people, their narrative changes. And I think, it's that kind of human behavior where you protect yourself. You don't necessarily know what you're protecting yourself from, but your instinct is being much more diplomatic and much nicer than you would be usually or otherwise.
So you had a lot of uncomfortable questions and those silences that you love. But when the camera stopped rolling, how did people react?
The reaction was actually very satisfactory because the main feedback was, wow, we didn't expect this, but we're so glad it's happening, So I think people were very happy of the format it took because even though the questions were tough, we were never out to hang people or put them in uncomfortable position or corners. What we were trying to get was the essence of the problem.
Did you expect them to be more open or less?
I expected them to be much more open. And that's what I said before, right? It was quite it was quite a shock. I'll say it. It was quite a shock to realize that people that say so many things outside would not take the risk to say it in front of camera. So I expected more. And again, I'm not disappointed because I think every person that came on the podcast really did it in a candid manner and took part and really did their part, really and truly, because it's not easy to have this discussion. So I'm thankful to each and every one of them because they really played the game.
Okay, so what do you think we should do to make them more comfortable?
I don't know if we can make them more comfortable. I just hope that the first season will actually teach people to feel more comfortable. That there are truths you can say without having to offend people. You can have tough conversations without fighting. You can disagree without, tearing each other's hair. So I'm hoping that the first season of Tracking the Truth would have helped for that.
We're already seeing good reactions.
Yes, and that's very nice to see.
So thank you, Clem. It was a pleasure and a great conversation. I have just 2 more questions for you. So the first one would be maybe what would be the first next step that we should do as an industry to address this chaos?
Sit together and speak, but not speak on panels, not speak about artificial things. Get on a table and speak about the real issues. Improve the communication. Understand each other. and find a middle ground.
Okay. The second one, more important, when you are on holidays, am I good enough to replace you?
No, sorry, you're fired.
Okay. I'll need to practice more. So thank you, everyone. This was Clemence Dujardin, our lovely host. Make sure you follow us on our socials and we will keep you updated on the future projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Milan.